these things start kicking up. All of my symptoms kick in. This is why. It's what is the particle and how small is it? Because that, as has been studied and confirmed now, is very readily, deeply deposited into the lung, which goes into the bloodstream, which subsequently causes this chain reaction of events that is out of control. This particular slide is a representative of what I just talked about. I tend to use as my blood pressure cuff in a building, a lab that incorporates digital microscopy, and it looks at 100% of the slide, and it captures an image of that air spore trap sample. For those of you that are curious, this particular sample had 1.8 million Aspergillus penicillium types per cubic meter of air. Again, inhale deep, right through this, right into the alveoli and deep into the alveoli, and goes into the bloodstream. If you're genetically predisposed or immunologically predisposed, things start to happen very, very, very quickly. And even if you're not, you know, some people are sensitized to mold. Well, we know that all mold can make anyone sick. It's a dose, duration, and over time, right? If you're in a contaminated environment long enough, you're going to have an effect. The biggest thing here that is very, 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 very challenging happens when these patients are finally get to a doctor. The doctors have the biggest challenge here. This is crazy. I just put this up here because the physicians that treat these people, predominantly seers, and for that matter, those who are immunologically sensitized, an allergy type patient, they got to look at everything. There's a lot that they have to do, and it takes a long time for them to be talking to those particular patients. There's a long road to hoe. They got to look at a lot of things. So our job is critical. The physician's job is very, very complex because they have to look at so many things biologically. In the end, and I want to leave a little bit of time here, when we're dealing with people that have allergies, when we're dealing with people that are seers, we have all dealt with them. It's not fun. In many cases, if it's a seers patient, and right now I'm dealing with two referred to me from doctors outside, these folks are at the end of their rope. We know what causes it. And then Normie, in its charter, Guidon, is here to change the world. The more we know about what this causes, or the more we can uncover and properly diagnose through the certain testing, whether it's a swab or a spore trap or a viability test, or looking at PCR type testing. What are the endotoxins found? You know, using a beta glucan, getting a comprehensive diagnosis is going to help us. And of course, the last thing here is that the entire environment, if I go back, and I don't want to have to go back and look at all these slides, but if something started growing on a wall or a floor or a ceiling, it got into the air. It's by the time this was identified, the containment barrier isn't going to contain the biotoxins, which is why it is so critical for the Normie sanitization protocol to be comprehensively enacted and done correctly, because the whole environment, if this was a problem in the kitchen, there's a biotoxin in the bedroom, and vice versa. So we owe it to these buildings to do the best we can, and there's just so much information out there today that can help us be better at what we do to reverse this contamination. I'm going to stop sharing right now. And Lance, if you want to open it up, and I hope that made sense. There was a lot of stuff there. I just hope that logically it makes sense, that we have a lot more stuff that we could be looking at. We have the tools to do it. And Normie's at the forefront of this as it relates to what should you be looking at, and here's how you correct it.
Well, Skip, first thing I want to thank you for doing that. It was a tremendous amount of information in there. And I do have a few questions I want to follow up with, and some of them were put in by some of our people here. But I want to kind of set the stage first to answer a question about why we don't, or why we haven't to this point reacted as aggressively towards these situations as some other parts of the world. Most of the people here in the room have seen somebody stung by a bee and have a reaction to it. Most of the people here have at some point seen somebody touch poison ivy and within a very short amount of time have a reaction to it.
Yep.
The biggest difference is you can see what's causing the problem. In what you're talking about, we're talking about microscopic organisms that people can't see. You know, it's just like saying, when's the last time you looked up in your house? Really? They don't look, they don't see, it doesn't exist. So I think that's one of the bigger things, that we're now dealing with a world that we can't see with the naked eye, and that's causing a lot of these issues. A comment came up the other day about doctors being so specialized in what they do that if they take care of your elbow and your hand hurts, they send you to another doctor.
Yeah.
But wait a minute, it's a few inches away. They don't do that. The double-edged sword to that, though, kind of works in our favor, because now we're having a lot of doctors actually researching this environmental medicine and getting very, very specialized into it. And these are the people doing the research and bringing this out to the forefront. So I see that as kind of working in our favor, even though we may have to run to 3 or 4 doctors because 2 different parts of our arm hurt. All right. So the question I have for you, why right now is there so much more research still being done outside of the US than in the US? If you can answer that in a G rating.
Well, number one, I would think that from 30,000 feet, the structures in Europe are a lot older than what they are here, right? That's first and foremost. Number two, they have probably, we're a very large country. It's a lot smaller over there. So the density of the population per structure is very different than it is here. We have, you know, other than outside the coast. Thirdly, I think that's just been on their radar screen. For example, we can use rising damp. Rising damp is a term that we're using now. That originated, I think, that was England, right? That's rising damp. The stone foundations got wet and everything goes. I mean, that's a term that, as I understand it, started over there. So it's just an interest. I think it's an interest thing. Now, it's not that we're not studying this, the scientific community and healthcare practitioners and researchers aren't doing that. It's just that there's a lot of it all over the world. I mean, I can do any Google search and find scientific published studies here in the States very, very readily. I have a lot more than what I showed you here tonight, but I didn't want to bore people with this stuff. And by the way, I don't want to be, an expert on this. I just use this so that I can gain an understanding of what I should be looking at in that building. And even though you haven't asked the question, let me just close the loop here on this circle. In many regards, this is a very complex mathematical equation. And I don't need to be a mathematician if I understand what the formula is. And if I adhere to the formula, I can get to the answer. Even though we can't see this stuff, if we know we should be looking for actinobacteria, and there are labs out there that'll send us a kit that will be able to do that, where we can get an interpretive result, and I can look for beta glucans and I can look for VOCs. We have all that. These are tools that need to go into the toolbox.
So can I add a fourth reason? Difference between, I think, Europe and some of these Asia, some of the other countries compared to us. And I don't want to sound too political about this, but I think generally speaking, allopaths, the doctors that we deal with from the MD side of it, in America, we're more interested in dealing with symptoms than we are causes.
Yeah.
And truthfully, for most of us, if we have a headache, well, we want to lose weight, it's easier to take Ozempic than it is to stop eating and exercise.
Right.
We've got pain somewhere. We're going to take a medicine to deal with the pain rather than the symptom, rather than finding the cause. So in 2010, I was invited to speak in Los Angeles at the Alternative Therapies Conference for cancer therapies. And there were 1,700 doctors there. I was asked there to speak on the subject of mold and how we're talking about a long time ago,
Yeah.
but I was there to talk about mold and the potential health effects related to mold, that what we knew then. And what was interesting was that out of these 1,700 doctors, 85% of them were from outside of the United States. And the practices that they were using, the therapies that they were using, were not approved by the FDA in the States. And the practices that they were using were as a result of exactly what you just said, Skip, that they had been looking at studies for the cause, and then they were addressing the cause. And so with cancer, for instance, they were dealing with diet. They were dealing with hyperthermia. They were dealing with different pH diets, those sorts of things. It was just a completely different approach than in the allopath world, at least back then, was if you got cancer, let's cut it out, or let's radiate it. So I think I just think that's a factor. Like I said, I don't want to sound too political about it, but I think our approach to medicine has been completely different than what we see in Europe.
Yeah, a lot of these studies, the Finnish studies that I started off with, it's a holistic approach. Is that a Finnish study or is that normie? Is that a Finnish study or normie? It's a holistic approach, because you will not solve the problem if you don't look at the source. Right. And then you're not going to solve the problem if you think that you only have to reduce quantitatively the amount of mold spores in a containment area. You're missing the containment areas for the most part, right? It's a fraction of the total cubic amount of air in a building. And the rest of it is contaminated, and we're only focused on what's behind the plastic. So cannot pay enough homage to the sanitization protocol and high-level disinfecting cleaning to remove these particulates. Because, hey, look, you've interacted with Dr. Remy and Dr. Heyman, right? If you don't remove the endotoxins to the extent that you can, or the actinobacteria, that person is not going to get better. They just won't, because they still are exposed. So it's a big, big, big job. And I suggest that to all my fellow colleagues out there in attendance tonight, and those that will be here in the future, whether we realize it or not, we're becoming more closely aligned to high-level hospital infectious disease cleaning professionals and biotechnology decontamination professionals, period. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
Because those are the two, that's what the world knows right now. That's the SpaceX of decontaminating microbial contamination. It's both of those two. One doesn't supersede the other. In combination, you will get the cleanest environment there is, period, if done properly.
Hey, Skip, I have a question here from one of our viewers tonight, and I want to put it out there to you and Doug. I'm comfortable with my own answer on this, and I want to remind you we only have a little bit before the top of the hour, because I know this will go on for a long time. But here's the question. If a property insurance company will pay for a mold inspection and testing for an affected property, then why won't a health insurance company pay for a mold inspection and testing to evaluate someone if their home is killing them? I'm sure we could do an easy hour on that, but I think the short answer is that they're staying in their lane, they're avoiding knowing, so they have to deal with the issue?
Well, here's my personal opinion on this. Mr. President, I look forward to your response. If the EPA, which we already know, their base study said 85% of the buildings in this country have IEQ contamination. 50% had signs of water damage at the time of the assessment, and over 50% of them are contaminated. How much is that going to cost to fix? That's if that isn't the definition of Pandora's box. And then there's another reason why the EPA, CDC, NIH aren't telling people why these are unhealthy, because the magnitude of the problem exceeds the amount of money we have. So we have to be very systematic right now. We have to go about this very specifically. It's not a shotgun approach. We have to, and this is why Normie has the ability to get people to start thinking differently about how are they going to cover this from an insurance standpoint, and can we get these regulatory agencies to start saying, here's why it's unhealthy, and here's how we're going to fix it. Mr. President.
So I'll just tell you, I think the interesting thing about this is it kind of goes back to what we just talked about. It's about informing people that they have to deal with the cause, not the symptom. And unfortunately, our society often they just don't know how to exist without insurance. They expect insurance to pay for the symptom, for the problem, rather than looking at the cause and saying, look, how can I keep an environment dry? How can I make sure, using IAQ management, that my home will never get to a situation where it's water damaged? Or if it is water damaged, how do I fix it so I'm not going to have a problem forever? You know, one of the interesting things you said that I just want to underscore, Skip, and great job, by the way. Love this. This is really what we need to talk about. But probably a lot of people in the room tonight heard terms that they've not been familiar with, actinos, endotoxins, biotoxins. And what you did was you laid out, I think, a beautiful picture of the whole microbial contamination issue, much, 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 much bigger than mold. And that's the kind of thing we talk about in the NCRSI class. And I wish, you know, in a perfect world, if I were running the world, all of our Normie members would take that class so that they would understand how to utilize envirobiomics and respiratory and blah, 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 and at least be familiar with it. Because as you said, and I think you're exactly correct, you used the word intervention. I'm just going to put a different term on that. But the traditional remediation processes just are not effective for the majority of the people. And we've got to learn how to do our jobs better. I'm just saying.
Well, there's no, and in order to do so, you have to understand what is it that you're trying to solve. And that's this type of information, which you don't have to be Einstein to have a working comprehensive knowledge of what this means, right? The other thing is, if we are and should, not necessarily tomorrow, but we're migrating towards this industry is going to be more closely aligned to hospital infectious disease decontamination cleaning, biotechnology, environmental decontamination. Then if you go to the doctor, first thing you do is put the blood pressure cuff on you. That's why I said this, that example of that spore trap sample, that's my blood pressure cuff, because I can see what's there. It measures 100% of the slide, and pictorially, I can present this. Nathan, this is what you're breathing. Yeah. And holy cow. So that's my blood pressure. So I'm using analogies. Secondly, if I see that, I can go, you know what? This is telling me I need to take an x-ray. And what is that x-ray going to be? Envirobiomics. I want to do a bacterial and endotoxin and actino test in here. And by the way, guess what? They've already said the doctor wants that. And they've already said the doctor wants an ERMI. And the doctor said they want a Hertz me too. So if the doctors are saying this, and this is what we're going at here, this is a collaboration between the patient, the doctor, the HVAC company, which I haven't even gotten into today. We stand on, but guess what? The Normie trained professional, and if you go through this NCRSI NCMP class, you're positioning yourself within the market that you're operating on, regardless of what you're doing, is to being the subject matter expert. And every single market all over the world needs somebody who understands this stuff, because the people that are affected are looking for hope. They want hope that they can talk to somebody and get the right information. And when people call us, they go, that's the closest thing I've gotten to what my doctor is telling me I got to deal with. I call all these other companies, they don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And I'll tell you what, I'm new to Normie. I couldn't tell you, I got to raise the biggest Normie flag I can find on the planet, because this is knowledge entity. This is going to teach people in the masses about what this really is and what the source is, and solve the problem and not put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
We are at the top of the hour, but I do have one comment I want to repeat from somebody in the room, and then we have a hand raised for another question. But real quick, Skip, the question I asked you earlier that you responded to, one of our members kind of responded at the same time, and they responded in a way that you physically can't. They did it in 5 words. Follow the money, big pharma.
I saw that pop up on the screen. Yeah. And guess what?
And Randall's in the room, and I'm going to open up his mic here. You had a question for us. Go ahead, Randall.
Thank you.
There you go.
Great stuff. Yes, go ahead.
Well, let me just say this again, just to balance that off. Big pharma exists because we want the drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a confirmation happening tomorrow, perhaps. We'll see. Might make a difference.
Yes.
So my question was, but I'll make a quick comment. You talked about the client, patient, not patient for us, but the client can't see things. I will, we've already talked, some of us have already talked a little bit about the immunolytics gravity plate concept. That my job with that, when I was talking with friends, family, and neighbors, is, hey, it's not as bad as you think. Many times it looks worse. They can see that. And now you have to help interpret what is a concern and what is not, based on what the criteria that's been developed over decades of several doctors analyzing the data. It's very visually powerful, and it's really critical to not overstate it, because people can easily jump to oh no, this looks horrible, when it's not. And so on, but sometimes it is horrible. But my question is on the treatments, and I think you kind of touched on this, like you say, with the sanitization protocol. The things I've seen, mold spores tend to be one of the hardest things to kill. The bacteria, viruses, and lots of other stuff tend to get done earlier. So we're already focusing on the technologies and methods that will kill the stuff we haven't tested for. If we just test for some of the, we don't have to test for everything on that list, and we're still using technologies that will cleanse a whole bunch of it. But then I'm going to add some things I've heard that I'm using. I've heard, and I need to research further, that they may neutralize mycotoxins, some citrus-based things and some other things to some degree on the more powerful things. That seems like a path of us pursuing what methods can go after the whole ball of wax, even if you haven't tested for the whole ball of wax, or more of the ball of wax, I should say, that will help neutralize more of the things in the environment, even if you went after the most obvious ones. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I'm not hearing that you're saying there's a silver bullet out there, but there's, right? I get that. Well, mycotoxins are different, and microscopic maple syrup, right? They can be aerosolized, they're attached, they're sticky, they stick to surfaces. I haven't seen anything yet that's been in a reproducible way with statistical relevancy that says XYZ process solves the problem. What we do know from the hospital infectious disease decontamination cleaning is that it's multi-step, and it involves a couple of things. First and foremost, if you're not cleaning biofilms off of surfaces, you are not going to destroy the microorganisms that are growing in it. So you have to clean first in order to remove the biofilms before you even disinfect and decontaminate and sanitize. There's a very specific process. Again, I defer back to hospital infectious disease cleaning, and what I'm referring to is the difference between cleaning, sanitization, and sterilization. That's a 99.9, 99.99, 99.999 log reduction. But you can't disinfect if you haven't cleaned first, because you're not going to get those reductions. And I can prove that every which way from Sunday with an ATP monitor. So I think that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just got to see how other people do it that have been tried and true for a very long time. Every time you go into an operating room or you know somebody that's gone into an operating room, that has been high-level decontamination, disinfected cleaning. And it does a good job, but it's manual cleaning isn't the only thing that gets you 100%. It can't. Human error.
Hey, Skip.
Can I?
Hey, Doug.
I'm sorry. Let me just add something, if I can, about testing. And Randy, I think this is to your point. We are so much further ahead of the game than we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, which is just exciting to me about where we're headed. And some of the things that we're going to be learning and finding out about how to deal with mycotoxins is really, I think, on the horizon, pretty close to us. But I can tell you, when I started selling air purifiers in 1996, I knew that ozone killed mold. We didn't have testing for it, but anecdotally, you could see it. You could put an ozone machine in a place where there was visible mold growing on the wall, and it would turn to powder, and you could wipe it off the wall. But then came testing, which was really interesting, not only on ozone, but on PCO technology, on ionization, on the DBI. All of a sudden, they were able to prove clinically and in field studies that it was dealing with Stachybotrys, which is one of the hardest molds to actually eliminate. There was actually then we found that testing was done on methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, one of the hardest bacteria to kill. And so what I'm saying is we're moving in the right direction. Hang on. Eventually, the science is going to be there. And that's why it's so important for us to be constantly learning and staying in touch with, just as Skip has done tonight, looking at the studies, looking at clinical studies, looking at field studies, doing case studies. All of that is so important because we can only know what we know, but we're learning more and more every single day. And that's just an exciting place to be.
You know, I want to quote Gavin real quick, Dr. Gavin McGregor Skinner, because he said it numerous times, follow the science.
Yes.
And that's where we're really heading right now. And truthfully, and it's something that you just said, Doug, that just keeps something in my mind. You said about, killing different organisms. It's easy to kill the organisms, but you have to do it in a way where you don't kill the host if it's a person infected by it, or create an environment that's so toxic people can't go into it. The whole concept of use bleach because it kills Ebola. Oh, if it kills Ebola, it'll take care of everything. Ebola is described as a wimpy virus or bacteria or whatever it is because it's easy to kill. But when you're dealing with envelope, non-envelope, positive, negative gram bacteria, what scares the scientists the most are spores.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing for them to deal with, and that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and there are technologies out there. There are chemicals that do eradicate all of it. Period. There are sporicidals out there that, by virtue of their definition as, for example, cold sterilants. I'm not going to go down that. By virtue of the definition, U.S. Pharmacopoeia 1072, a sterilant is an agent that destroys all forms of microbial life and their spores in either its liquid or vapor format. But the problem is, right, endotoxins are a fragment of that bacterial wall. And if you kill it and you leave it in the environment, where we all know now, after today, everybody's smarter because I did a great job tonight showing that if it was on the surface, it got in the air, it goes back on the floor, you walk past the floor, it goes back, and you breathe it, you've left a contaminant in there. That's why this is so difficult. It is very meticulous. It has to be done in a certain way. You can't go in there with a rag and just wipe stuff off. It has to be methodical, meticulous, and technique dependent. Anyway.
So Doug, how do we raise his enthusiasm? How do we get him more engaged in this discussion?
One of the things I love about
you did a great job.
He shares our passion, and I just think it's a phenomenal opportunity that we have to change the lives of millions of people by creating cleaner, safer, healthier environments. I just wish more of our Normie members would get on board and get beyond the basic class and start taking some advanced classes. It's not about money as much as it is about education and staying up with the science. Because if you don't, you'll be left behind, right, Skip?
Yeah, you're already it's already past you. If for those of you out there that have witnessed some of this tonight, if you elect not to do this, somebody in your market is going to know this.
Yeah.
And you are going to be replaced. This is where it's going.
Yeah.
Doug, I talked right before I knew who Mr. President was. I've been talking about this in my marketplace for 5 years. People thought it was nuts. They thought I was crazy. Custer, I have more arrows in my back than you can possibly imagine. Guess what? We're here now.
Yeah.
5 years.
That's right. We are.
If you don't know this stuff, not to recite it verbatim, but to have a comfortable working understanding of the complexities of the contaminants in a water damaged building or structure, somebody in your marketplace is going to know it, and they're going to be the go-to.
Well, what you did tonight, Skip, was help take the people here in this room or anybody else that's watching this past the I've witnessed the bee sting and see a reaction.
Yeah.
Now they know there's other things they can't see causing the same type of reaction.
Yeah, I know we've gone really long. Let me just leave it at this. When I share what I just talked about tonight to people who say, I'm so sick. And then after we do the sanitization protocol in its entirety, if it was a remediation, we did that appropriately, but we left the house in as microbially decontaminated state as we possibly could. They go, I feel so much better. And I say, do you want to know why? Because here's all the testing. And you know what they say? No, I don't need to know why. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Some of them do, but that's it. I mean,
Right.
we're a hell of a lot more aligned, hospital infectious disease, biotechnology, than we ever possibly could have managed. And it all
Absolutely.
started with what normally started 20 years ago, almost 21 years ago.
Skip, thank you again. Doug, anything else?
Thank you, Skip. Great job, man.
Jeff Cross with CleanFacts. I'm here with a good friend, Sean Bissione.
Nice to see you, Jeff.
Good to see you. I walk into the hotel for this event. First thing Sean says to me is, Jeff, I got to show you something. Not, how you doing? Let's get a beer. Nothing like that.
Nope.
But he stopped me and we talked about some pictures on his phone. I was a little surprised, but maybe not so surprised. Sean?
I wouldn't say that. I was trying to warn you because I saw you're maybe going to your guest room and where you're staying, and I had just come freshly from my room stay. And anyway, after checking in, I just wasn't happy with the sanitary level that my room had been delivered to me.
So as cleaners and restorers, we might be pickier than some, maybe not. I personally don't enjoy hotels. You probably don't either.
Nope.
But we want a clean room. Let's talk about what you discovered, your experience, and then the takeaway we can get from this.
I check into a room and I don't generally bring my inspection lights into a guest room for the same reason. I don't want to I can't unsee it. And as it came down, I accidentally brought my UV light in, and I decided to open it up and turn it on last night after getting back to the room. And I already wasn't quite pleased with the absolute visual part of what I just saw when I came in. It didn't seem like it really was a cared for room.
We've all been there.
And I, unfortunately, decided I wanted to approach management for no other reason than just trying to make it better. I really wasn't trying to be angry about it. I wanted to make a suggestion. So I decided, after taking a video of this room,
Let's look at all these pictures and videos.
I went ahead and I took a quick view of the room as I got there and started previewing around with
What's that?
This could be more of a sweat stain or something else. It's on the back of the chair, but some of these pictures on the bottom and on the ottoman piece.
This after you sat on all this?
I had my jacket on it, and I actually, after taking it, I was like, oh, and I no longer feel comfortable anywhere in the room. I mean, the carpet had signs of under the UV. Everything was signed. It just wasn't cared for. Whether it was a questionable thing that you might think it was, blood or other bodily fluids that it could have been, there are other cleaning agents that will reflect like this, but it just showed not very good care. And they really weren't cleaning at the level that I thought a property like this could. And I pay for.
Right. Let's see the video.
The video, I mean, I did a comparison of regular lighting,
Okay. That looks dirty, but not scary.
but not scary. And then I went over and did it the exact same
This is the black light.
with a black light on it,
And-
365 nanometer. Just
And
a,
I wonder what that is.
I wonder. There's some spots that I absolutely,
Let the viewer beware.
I don't want to know, and I can't unsee it. Anyhow, I did ask for management to give me a call or to come to the front desk, and they chose to not. They sent a message to a different department within the property to someone else's problem. They didn't accept the ownership of it, and all I was just looking for an acknowledgement because I didn't think I'd find any better. And I don't think they have a higher hospitality standard to be able to give us better. So they sent someone to the management on the other team of the property and hospitality and housekeeping. They never showed up. I still have no message about it. I didn't get an offer for an increased room, an improved housekeeping habit, nothing. So it's disappointing because I'm not at a lower street level hotel off the strip. I am in a nicer property. And I think they should have a higher standard.
So, Sean, the takeaway from this is obviously we want to clean hotels. Maybe look at the reviews. Complain you did that. It's not going to do any good. But on the job, when you're doing an inspection in a home or a business and you see something like this, you're asked to maybe do an estimate.
Yep.
And you see something that needs to be addressed. How do you take that information and turn it into a positive to where you can do the job right and fix this issue?
Yeah, because oftentimes when we do that, we bring these lights and things, show the client, they're like, I don't want to clean, throw it away, give me a match and some gasoline. And we can make it more sanitary for them. We can explain and interpret what we're seeing as that's dust, and think maybe not cleaning the edges as much as showing that versus that's a contaminant or a spill or something that happened that shows maybe an unhealthy level of concern. And I think I look at it really deeply in my restoration company because a lot of my clients will bring these lights and inspect after we've done. And we're not perfect all the time in creating what we've done, and we need to be accountable to that level of under that kind of a microscope or bright light or different light and what we're cleaning for and what we're achieving as cleaners and restorers, because what more is restoration and managed specialty cleaning?
So this experience here at the hotel when you saw that chair and the ickiness, I mean, we could probably have that test and see what that is, but that's another story.
I didn't bring the biological swab tester.
Good, because you'd be staying at a different hotel. But I guess my question is, if someone were to come in and inspect and like you did, what would you say would need to be done to fix that?
Thorough cleaning. There are, in this case, I think the better choice in this solution because of the fabric and the textile is to replace it.
Okay.
And not try to clean it and make it acceptable or answer for what might still be visible
So as
after
a cleaner,
cleaning.
you would recommend that at times?
I would, very frequently. When I don't think it's sanitary or recoverable to that tolerance, we'll recommend to replace it or live with what we've shown you that it is. Because we can't always even clean the residues that I'm seeing on this. Some of it isn't what we would interpret as real contaminant, but actual residue or ghosts of the cleanup of the phosphorus and other things that fluoresce. So it's being accountable to what that actually is. You know, is it sticky? Is it smelly? Is it visual under a UV only?
What it sounds like to me, Sean, is you're talking about being a consultant instead of just selling a job and being a technician.
Absolutely. Educate your customer. Make sure they understand why you're helping them. And it's not just this price off of this menu, but here's what we're trying to deliver so you can do better later.
All right. Enjoy that room tonight.
I'm not sure I can. Sleep with maybe one eye open.
One eye open. Thanks, Sean.
Take care.
Hello, this is Governor J.B. Pritzker here to recognize March 23rd through 29th as International Cleaning Week. This week and every week, we're saluting the hardworking cleaning professionals who keep our state sparkling. The cleaning industry is essential, safeguarding our health and helping fuel our economy. According to the International Sanitary Supply Association, proper cleaning and disinfection slash virus concentrations by 42%, and with proper hand hygiene, that soars to 85%. I want to thank the ISSA, which has been headquartered in Illinois for over 100 years and has promoted the employment of thousands of Illinoisans across 300 member companies in our state. And to the workers on the front lines every day, I recognize this work is often thankless. but your selfless dedication does not go unnoticed, and the state of Illinois appreciates you. Happy International Cleaning Week.
As a cleaning industry professional, and especially for those watching right now who are ISSA member organizations, what is your focus? It may align with the ISSA brand promise, which is changing the way the world views cleaning. How do we make real change? It comes with initiatives that focus on improving what we do in the industry. The EPA Safer Choice program is one such initiative that is in the spotlight today. Yet you might say, I've heard about this program years ago. That may be true, but some emerging news has amplified the reach and value, and you'll want to hear about it today. But I'm not the one here today to divulge what this is. Let's welcome our three panelists. Let's start with Dr. Gavin McGregor Skinner. Gavin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi, Jeff. Happy New Year. I'm the Senior Director at ISSA, and I collaborate with both the people on this panel today in a project called Making Safer Choices.
Thank you. And Dr. Rebecca Bascom, can I call you Becky?
Sure.
All right. Tell us about yourself.
I'm a professor of pulmonary medicine in the Department of Medicine, Public Health Sciences at Penn State. I'm also a lung doctor and delighted to be working on this project.
Glad you're here with us. And last but not least, Dr. Amrana Pasha-Razak, tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. And it's a pleasure to work with Gavin and Becky. I am a professor at the City University of New York School of Medicine. I am an internal medicine physician, an internist, and an epidemiologist. I work in the Department of Community Health and Social Medicine with a focus on underprivileged and vulnerable populations.
And you really like women's health too, and mothers and children. That's
Right.
one of your big things, which I think is completely pertinent for this project.
Because 80% of people who are directly involved in the cleaning process are actually women.
I think what people now understand is that the three of you know each other pretty well.
We do.
Very good.
So Gavin and I worked together at the pandemic, the time of the pandemic, and had a very similar focus, which is how do you come up with practical approaches to big problems? And COVID clearly was a big problem, and cleaning is something that so many people do. And there's so much progress that can be made. And I think I like this project because it's practical and it's connected to the real world through ISSA.
Appreciate that. The only thing I wish is I had doctor before my name, but I'm just gonna have to put up with not having that. So,
yeah, but you're editor, so you've got the big power.
So we've teed this up a bit. We're now interested in what this news is. We all know what the EPA Safer Choice program is. Dr. Gavin, tell us about this big news that we're going to get into.
Jeff, so we have a project that we've been working on. It's called Making Safer Choices, but two significant events happened in 2024 that we wanted to share with everyone. So in April 2024, the federal government directed that all federal agencies need to prioritize and purchase sustainable products and services. And the change that was reflected in the U.S. General Services Administration. This is the organization that does all the government contracts. So they oversee 600 cleaning service contracts for more than 1,500 U.S. government buildings. It's about over $400 million annually. They mandated the purchase and use of cleaning products and hand soaps that are certified with eco labels, such as the EPA Safer Choice and a couple of specific Green Seal certifications. So that happened in April. Then what happened in December 2024 was that the National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year 2025 went through the House of Representatives, to the Senate, over to the President, and was signed into law December 23rd, that authorizes the appropriations for all military activities in the U.S. Department of Defense. And there's a section in that act that says the Secretary of Defense shall procure, to the maximum extent practicable, only those cleaning products that are identified under the Safest Choice program. And that's what we're doing. So now we have both federal government buildings as well as all the military installations. There's military installations, military buildings, as well as aircraft carriers, planes, tanks, cars, vehicles in every state of the country now. A great opportunity for the whole industry as well as academia, the university partnerships we have, to help people create new contracts and make safer decisions.
Well, this is big news. Gavin, thank you for sharing that. Dr. Beck, anything to add?
Well, I think that when I hear about a program that reaches so many people, I think it's a huge opportunity.
How do you envision this initiative transforming cleaning industry practices, and what kind of a timeline are you looking at?
The timeline is short. We're doing this really in an intensive way in the next year. We're looking carefully at what other people have done that works. So we start off with a phase we call exploration. We're going to be reaching out to people in the ISSA industry to say, what do you do currently for training? What languages do you train in? What works for you? And we're going to connect the lessons learned to the gaps identified. And the gaps will be identified by talking to industry leaders and also people that are making procurement decisions, buying the products, and people that are using products. So we're saying, what do you see as to what's working and what isn't working? And then from there, we're saying, what are your ideas as to how to do better training? And then connect those into training videos, training sessions that then can get to the ISSA website, which is this amazing dissemination platform. A lot of people can go there to find their information. So we're going to ask, we're going to listen, we're going to innovate, and then we're going to reach out.
A lot to do in a year. Gavin, can we do it?
Yes, we can, because it's the power of collaboration, Jeff. And it's the power of collaboration through ISSA members, as well as working with two fantastic universities, one at Penn State and City University of New York. And that power of the people, the different skill sets that we have, and the different networks that we have, and the communities we're going to create, and the partnerships is going to it's going to be a fantastic journey, 2025.
Mm-hmm. It'll be good to see. Becky, back to you, and then we'll go to Amrana. What types of tools or training are being created to help businesses adopt safer choice certified products?
A lot of different tools. We're talking to people of all ages. I've learned about TikTok. I mean, turns out that there are some people that get their information from a TikTok video. And we have people on our team who are in their 20s, and they think the way to train people is with a TikTok video. We talk to people in their 40s. They have a very different view. Some people want to see it on a screen. So there's no single way to train people. But what you need to do is understand how and when training occurs and how good information gets transmitted. And once you understand that, you can design very effective training, and ISSA can then disseminate it, send it around.
Yeah, I've tried TikTok a few times, but I'm not too good with it. Amrana, you might TikTok.
I actually do not, but
Oh.
my students tell me at the School of Medicine that a lot of our patients, especially those that live in low and middle income areas of New York City, get a lot of their health information from TikTok. And I think that is likely to be true for a lot of people who are at the end users, both of the products that we are talking about, but also the end consumers for the training materials, so the actual cleaners. And I think that the fact that we can approach this in a variety of different languages, that is part of the strength of this collaboration. The fact that we can approach this in a variety of different ways in terms of the output, whether it's TikTok videos, it's written material, it's video training type of videos, will allow us to reach a maximum number of people who are actually the target audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I was walking through airports and I've been looking at the cleaning staff in an airport. They all have phones. Their cleaning products may or may not have a label on them all around the world. They may or may not have, they certainly won't have a detailed material safety data sheet on their cleaning cart, but they all have phones. So we need to think about how to train with the resources and products and tools that a cleaner has with them at all times.
Good information. Yeah, everyone has a phone. We all can use them to access what we need, that's for sure. Let's talk about a little bit of manufacturing. Where are these products manufactured? So many of them, and more will be added to the program. Gavin, talk about that and what this means for this program.
Yeah, really important question, Jeff, because when we talk about eco labels such as the EPA Safer Choice, what is that? And the real important point is that nearly all of the EPA Safer Choice products, over 2,135 products, are actually manufactured here in the US. So they're by American US companies. So when we're talking about this, I'm going to hold up a product, Jeff. This is a product that I use. That little label, if you can see that label there, that's the Safer Choice label. And one of the challenges that we have in our project here is to see what is the awareness of that label. So how do we increase knowledge, demand, and use of these products if you don't know what the label is? And the label is not just the point that in those products there are safer chemicals, safer ingredients for cleaning, but these products have been evaluated for performance. They have recycled content. So every manufacturer has to make these products with at least 95% recycled content. There's an air quality component in the criteria under the Safer Choice standard that each product can't expose or release anything that's 10 microns or less. That's those particles, Jeff, that we can breathe in. So that has to be tested. We look at waste products, we look at packaging, we look at performance. Each product that carries that label must perform as well or better in comparison to leading brands that already exist without damaging the surfaces, without influencing the air quality. So it's that increasing that knowledge, Jeff, of that label. Then, as we saw with both the federal government and now the Military Reauthorization Act, there's going to be changing contracts. And as Becky said, then we've got to work out how do we use those products and how do we use them in the way that the manufacturers designed them to be used. And that's going to take a collaboration. That's going to take partnerships. So again, label recognition is going to be the key. We're doing baseline surveys and focus group discussions now in both New York and Pennsylvania to learn how do people make decisions on what gets cleaned, how it gets cleaned with what product, how do they buy and purchase those products, then how do they train to use those products?
And we really are seeing that a little knowledge goes a long way. So a member of our team who was brought on board for a very specific knowledge that he had, he'd never heard of the label. And he came back the next week and said, you know what? I've got that label in my cleaning products. So he was, once he saw it and got interested in it, he was able to see it in a completely different context in his daily life as he was looking at his home closet.
Yeah, it's the impact of what everyone's doing here.
Yeah.
Amran, anything to add to that?
So, I think one of the key points that really is a strength of our project is the fact that we are moving up and down the value chain, as Gavin has taught me it is called, from manufacturing all the way to the people who do the actual cleaning. And the cleaners may have never heard of these manufacturers. They may not know anything about where the products that they are using are coming from, or sometimes, unfortunately, even how they should be used appropriately. So helping to make those links along the value chain, I think, will be one of the key strengths that we'll bring to this.
Amrana and Becky, I want to ask you both this question. Amrana, you first. Are there benefits for businesses that switch to safer choice products? Because they're going to wonder what's in it for them.
Well, I think that there are two things that I really want to highlight. One is the health benefits. There are known harms that can occur to people, there are known risks that with some of the less safe cleaning products that are out there, including skin diseases, skin damage, lung diseases, eye irritation, endocrine or glandular disruptions, and also carcinogenic or cancer-causing effects. These are what are known. For my interest as a women's health person, what is not known is what the impact of these some of these unsafe products is on the fetus, on pregnant women who are involved in the cleaning industry. So there are both harms that we know about and harms we don't know about that can occur when people make choices that are less safe. The safer choice products, making safer choices means a healthier workforce, a workforce that has fewer harms coming from the products that they are exposed to. And I think that is sort of the biggest advantage. The second thing that I was really interested to hear, and I know that a lot of people who are involved in the cleaning industry ask this question, is are these safer choice products as effective at the cleaning? Will I have to work harder? Will I have to put in more elbow grease if I use a safer choice product? And what we're saying to them is no, they are as effective or more effective than less safe alternatives. So I think that those are both advantages that companies that switch to safer choice products have.
That comment is what we heard with the green cleaning movement years ago when products were brought on. People had that same question. Are they going to work as good? Thank you for answering that, Amrana. Becky, anything to add?
I've worked with companies who were addressing health issues in their workplace. And the thing that I've learned time and again is that when you pay attention to a process and make it better, make it more efficient, make it safer, you may start by doing it for the health of the people doing the job. But oftentimes it translates into a better process, a more efficient process, and so a more cost-effective process just for the job itself, to say nothing of the avoided cost of a health harm to a workforce. So I think that this project is a very sensible one, as borne out by previous projects I've been part of.
And Gavin, what would you say to this? Anything else?
Yeah, just one thing, Jeff. One of the key strengths of this whole entire Making Safer Choices project is that a trade association, ISSA, is collaborating with university professors that are really good at research. They're really good at identifying what the current knowledge is, the attitudes, and the barriers to purchasing and using cleaning products. And that's going to drive us forward. A lot of these questions that we're talking about sound fundamental, but they're not. They just haven't been asked. And they haven't been asked, Jeff, at scale. And when we go to scale and we cover schools, hotels, government buildings, military installations, airports, stadiums, convention centers, beauty salons, churches, all the different sectors that we're going to penetrate, we're going to get some really interesting answers that will work with the university professors to say, what's the solution? What's the next step?
There's a willingness to look at this area in the cleaning industry. I say that because I see patients in clinic who have lung injury, and they reflect on their work and they say, you know, I could have used a better product, but I didn't know better. And but there's a willingness of people to do the job well, do their job well. They want to clean. There's a strong sense of professionalism among cleaning people who do cleaning, but also a willingness to protect their health and to take the steps to get the training to know how to protect their health. And I think that's what's so much fun, really, about this project, is to connect to people who are on the ground, like ISSA is, and people who think about groups of people like Omrana does, and people who listen to people's lungs like I do. I think we're all in it to work together.
Thank you for that. Let's stay with you, Becky, on this next question. We'll wrap up in a few minutes. This project is focused on two states. We talked about that, New York and Pennsylvania. What strategies have you been talking about with your team there and with this group to ensure the longevity and scalability of this beyond Pennsylvania and New York?
Yeah, that's a great question, because what we don't want is to do this work and then have it stuck in a closet or in a paper, and not be out there working for people. And the ISSA dissemination, they've got this, you know, they've got a reach. ISSA has a reach. And if we put together products, podcasts, things that are available, that someone can go to a link and find it, they can get their information. It'll be there. It'll be a multimedia library, if you will. So that's number one. Number two is we're going to figure out where a podcast online will be fine and where person-to-person contact is needed. And so we'll be able to make recommendations about how to move this thing forward. And then ISSA, through their members, can share that information and figure out how to make sure that this project has legs.
I like that because we want to see this grow and get bigger and better.
Yeah.
Gavin, anything to add to that?
I think it's really important, Jeff. This is important, and as Dr. Arana said, the value chain, that's that entire cleaning industry, the users, the purchasers, the retailers, the product formulators, the ingredient manufacturers. If there's one thing a trade association can do really well, is we can collaborate and bring everyone together under a partnership with purpose. And that's what we're focusing on, a partnership with purpose, working with academia, with university professors to answer some questions that we just don't have the answers for right now.
Mm-hmm. Amrana, let's ask you this last question, then we'll get Becky and Gavin to add. Because at the end of the day, we have to know it works. How do you measure the success of a project of this scale?
I am a huge believer in the forgive me because I'm not a native English speaker, so if I get my idioms wrong, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We need to see when Becky is walking through airports in the next year, at the end of this period, and perhaps after a second project to upscale this our work, does she see safer choice products on the cleaning carts in the airports? Are we really able to increase the uptake and usage of safer choice products? And we won't be asking Becky to walk airports across the country, but we will try to measure uptake through ISSA members, an increase in uptake of safer choice products as the final or one of the final measures of our success. Are more people buying it? Are more people using it? And are more people aware of it?
I personally volunteer to walk the airport like in Hawaii and look for products if you want me to. So I think there's volunteers out there.
Jeff, you're second on the list.
Oh.
My name's already up there, you know.
I can find other nice warm tropical places if, you know. Thank you, Amrana. We appreciate that. Becky, what would you add to what Amrana said?
When something takes hold, it often takes hold on many levels, and it takes a while to watch it grow. And so I think we're going to be monitoring things at all the different across the value chain, and continue to monitor what's working and where the gaps are. I think we're in this for the long haul, but we want to make a difference in the short term.
Absolutely. And we're going to wrap up our session today. Gavin, share your thoughts here and maybe a call to action for those watching. What should they do? And with that.
Well, Jeff, this is the beginning of 2025. By the end of 2025, it's all about storytelling. It's about being able to listen to narratives on how people clean and how they made those decisions to clean. This project has been, again, so much work and thought has gone into this with the 3 partners. We have a plan. We're going to conduct surveys and focus group discussions. We're going to look at the current knowledge and attitudes and barriers to purchasing and cleaning and using cleaning products. We're going to develop community-designed education and training solutions on purchasing and using Safer Choice products. We're going to package all of that into toolkits, playbooks, and videos. And as Orana would tell me, we're going to make sure that language is not a barrier. Other social issues aren't a barrier. The location where you live is not a barrier.
If you've been watching the news, the United States has announced its intention to withdraw from the World Health Organization. Some may be wondering what this means for them, personally and professionally. To comment on this, I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Gavin McGregor-Skinner, Senior Director at ISSA. Gavin, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Jeff, and it has been a busy week.
I think most of your weeks are very busy. And when something like this is announced, you probably get busier. Gavin, initial thoughts?
Yeah, I think the challenge we have, there's a gap there, Jeff, with the industry, is what does the World Health Organization do globally? Well, they have 194 member states. That's really countries and other states that, 194, very representative. I've been on a number of deployments, Jeff. My personal experiences working with the World Health Organization. In 2004, I had a 9-week deployment to Indonesia for the tsunami response. 2014, I did 3 deployments to West Africa for the Ebola outbreak, setting up, managing Ebola hospitals. I've had 3 deployments to Afghanistan, 2 deployments to Iraq for really strengthening, prevent, detect, and respond to infectious disease threats and looking at systems. And I can say that those deployments, the work that I did with WHO or World Health Organization, is about successful coordination and collaboration. And that's what's really a good point to everyone. Understand that the world does need an international infrastructure to fight infectious diseases.
So that makes sense. And thank you for all you've done through your career to help combat these infectious issues. Some might wonder, how is the traditional cleaning industry tied to this decision? Is this going to impact our frontline workers, those who are part of ISSA?
Yeah, good question, Jeff. Many of our ISSA member companies are international. The point that I'd really want to highlight to everyone in the industry that, yes, you may hear that the US government might, withdraw, and they've done it before. They've withdrawn from the World Health Organization. But more importantly, that's going to leave a gap. It's going to leave a massive vacuum when it comes to prevent, detect, and respond to infectious disease threats. And really want to emphasize that America cannot stop the pathogens from crossing its borders. Let's look at Ebola, Jeff. A person hopped on a plane, landed at an airport, went to a city, went to a hotel, went to their apartment, went to a hospital and spread the disease. And we've seen that happen many times for other diseases. So really, I think right now we need to talk about what the cleaning industry could do and how they do it. And it probably doesn't take a lot of money to do what they need to do if we do withdraw from the World Health Organization.
So, Gavin, despite how you might feel about this withdrawing from the World Health Organization, you see this as a possible opportunity for the industry.
Yeah, whenever there's change, Jeff, it creates emotions. And we've seen a lot of emotions come out this week. But whenever there's change, then you have to bring the team together, the community, and come up with what happens next. And so from the cleaning industry perspective, we need a coordinated effort. We need to, again, educate, train, make aware of what is our role in preventing and responding to infectious disease threats. How does the entire value chain of the cleaning industry, how do we build technical capacity? How do we strengthen supply chains for equipment, tools, and products? How do we, as a community, as a cleaning industry community, continue to establish technical norms, standards, and guidance? And so I'm going to throw out three things here, Jeff. Right now, this team needs to come together. That team consists of anyone that creates or delivers cleaning products. That's the first part of the team. Manufacturers, distributors, wholesalers, retailers. The second part of the team is anyone that cleans buildings. Building service contractors, in-house service providers, residential cleaners. The third part of the team is anyone that operates buildings or facilities that need to be cleaned. The building owners, the facility managers, the operation managers, the supervisors. Because as we saw, when we had Ebola, when we have flu, when we have norovirus, when we even had COVID, there were critical gaps on how do we clean? And if we could get that team together, those key parts of the industry together, come up with solutions, tell the world, this is what we do, this is how we do it. These are the critical methods and procedures to clean and disinfect to decrease the likelihood of those infectious disease spreading, because history's shown us. Person hops on a plane, lands at an airport, you've got the disease.
History tells us that, and a lot of movies too. So there's that.
Yes, Jeff, there's been a few good movies, and probably now's the time to get back on your Netflix, Prime, whatever account it is, and watch a few of those movies.
To scare you straight, maybe.
Maybe.
So, Gavin, it sounds like as this develops and this withdrawing occurs, trade associations become even more important.
Yes, what the US government does, they'll make decisions, but what they do is going to leave critical gaps. And we as an industry, so ISSA, leading association for the cleaning industry, if this happens, we should be now preparing a plan and working out how to fill that critical gap. We've got the World Health Assembly. This is the World Health Organization. Big meeting occurs in May. The government's going to handle that. They'll do that. Parts of the non-government private sector do attend. But we've also got International Cleaning Week, March 23rd to 29th. We want everyone to come together to look at solutions, but more importantly, let's distinguish those critical methods and procedures, Jeff. Let's look at where we set the standard of care for the industry, and let's look at how we work as a team to continue to create healthy and safe built environments, and also then prevent diseases spreading. We've got big norovirus, big flu outbreaks happening right now. And again, we're seeing our members respond appropriately.
And it's good to see that happening, the collaboration. Well, Gavin, we have a lot to do. Let's get going.
Sounds like a plan, Jeff.
Today, I'm with Dr. Gavin McGregor Skinner, Senior Director of GBAC, which is a division of ISSA, along with a special guest, Doug Hoffman, the Executive Director of NORME. Gavin and Doug, how are you both doing?
We're in Florida, Jeff.
What does that mean? Does that mean things are great?
Yeah, it's just amazing, Jeff. Just the power of ISSA, our trade association, the alliance that we've had with NORME now since 2018, and it just keeps getting stronger every day, especially here in the state of Florida.
Fantastic. And Doug, we do value your partnership. Thank you for all you do with ISSA, and of course, to support our members and those that are part of Normie. But I understand something happened recently, and that's why you two are in Florida. You're not on vacation, but you're working, right? You're working.
We're working. Sure. Yeah, we're
So,
working.
What's the news?
So
What's the news?
There's two big news items here, Jeff. The big news item is that Doug and I have been talking about training facilities, globally throughout the world, schools, universities, community colleges. When you put people in a classroom, we know that they spread droplets through coughing, sneezing, talking, singing, if you go to those sort of classes, and that spreads germs. And then Doug and I were talking about, well, then how do you clean a classroom after a training to make it safe and healthy for the next class? And so the Normie Pro Academy, which is a wonderful training center in Sunrise, Florida, has gone through the GBAC Star accreditation program. And really, it's about telling their cleaning story. Is it based on best industry standards, science and evidence, which it is? I've now done the site visit. We've filled out the documentation. So the Normie Pro Academy in Sunrise, Florida is now a GBAC Star accredited facility, following our 20-element program, which really brings them into the family of being a certified ISSA training facility for all of the ISSA members.
And I can't tell you how excited we are about this. I think bringing this to the table for remediators, especially mold remediators that we do so much training for, indoor air quality specialists, this is really just a perfect marriage in a lot of ways, because all of them do cleaning. They need to know how to do it correctly. And so bringing this side of the industry together, this merger, as it were, is pretty cool.
Yes, I agree. Now, Doug, you've been doing training for a long time, and obviously working ISSA and Normie together is a smart move. Tell us about your training center that makes it special, and why will this be such a good thing for the industry?
Well, the unique thing about our training center is we've been doing Zoom, of course, for a really long time, Zoom training. And so we took this classroom and created essentially a television studio. So when we do training at the Normie Pro Academy, we can do it on site, obviously, where we can do hands-on training and so forth. But Jeff, we have 4 cameras, 16 microphones, and we have 3 televisions there. And so what we can do is we can actually broadcast live online training while we're doing on-site training. We call it simulcast training, and that's been incredibly effective. Think about the last couple of classes we've had. We had someone fighting. We had several people from the UK. So being able to offer that kind of level of training and for them not to have to travel, that's pretty cool.
I'm still looking for the workshop that the location that has a good popcorn maker. Do you have that, Doug?
No, but I'll ask Gavin if he can provide one.
Yeah, sorry, Jeff, not a big fan of popcorn, but I wanted to emphasize that what this journey has been. The Cleaning for Health curriculum based on Dr. Michael Berry's Cleaning for Health book. Really, it's a textbook that was written 30 years ago, 1993. We used that book from Dr. Michael Berry in a workshop in November 2022 at the Normie Academy to train 20 master trainers, but also to develop and update the curriculum. So we spent 10 days developing new curriculum that we then presented to the US Department of Labor at the federal government level. They went through and reviewed it and told us it was approved. Since then, this year alone, our partnership, the work we've done together, we've now just this morning completed our 40th workshop. That's over 720 people trained in just under 9 months.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And the feedback we're getting from the 720 people that we've trained in a face-to-face environment, like at the Normie Pro Academy in Sunrise, Florida, was that they haven't had any training in the last 5 years. 87% of everyone that's come to our workshop, that's a big number, have not had any training in the last 5 years. And as Doug said, what makes this training center special, it's all hands-on. But what that means for me, adults learn by doing. And if you learn, so this morning's workshop, we just finished a 3-hour Cleaning for Health workshop here in Lake Worth, Florida. And it wasn't about how to clean, it was about why to clean. The Cleaning for Health workshop, the introduction to our program, is why do we clean based on reservoirs of germs from people as well as reservoirs of germs in the environment. And that was brand new information to everyone who attended today. We had such a fantastic morning.
And everyone stayed awake, alert.
So far. So the exciting thing about this to me is that we hear this so often that someone's been in the industry for a really long time. They've not heard this information before. I think Gavin is bringing to the table the science behind why we do what we do. And that's just, for a lot of these guys, new information. So it's fun to see their excitement and to tell us after this kind of event, this is the best training I've ever had. So it's really cool. That was really fun this morning.
Thank you. Can you talk to maybe the requirements that people have for training, the need for that you're fulfilling, licensing or governmental requirements, or maybe to get a contract for cleaning? Does that fit into this?
Well, I can tell you on our side for the mold remediators and mold assessors, of course, we're an approved training provider for all of the states that require licensing. And, they've never thought about themselves as cleaners. But the truth is they are. That's exactly what they do. And you've got to remove the contaminants, microbial growth, before you really do anything else in a remediation project. So I think being able to bring this kind of training to them is really, really neat. And it allows them to I think, kind of ramp it up a little bit in terms of the way they see themselves. We've talked a lot about this idea of making sure that these guys feel like they're essential, because they are. And when you talk to remediators and sanitizing companies and restoration companies and are able to show them this is a side of the industry that you can specialize in, I think that's really exciting.
It is. And I found that interesting that restoration people don't realize that they're also cleaners, because isn't that what it is? It's you're cleaning. You may be doing some construction as well, but you're cleaning. So
yeah, that's exactly right. During the COVID outbreak, one of the things that we pivoted toward was a certified sanitizing professional. And the purpose for that was that we wanted our guys to understand what we've always said. Mold is just a surrogate for other types of microbes, and you are actually in the microbial business. When you use some kind of sanitization protocol to remove mold, you're also removing bacteria and other types of microbes. So it's just, I think, a great addition to what we're doing.
So Gavin, there's lots of training centers in the country, around the world. We need more. I think that's your angle. This is our second interview about a new training center. Why? Why do we need more? What's going on?
Great question, Jeff. Really important. And we've used this term, essential cleaning profession. What makes anyone, electrician, a plumber, a builder, anyone that does a trade, and cleaning is a trade, be recognized by federal and state government, insurance companies, for example, and just facility managers across the country, around the world? It's training, it's education, it's workforce development. And it's so important that we look at, if you're going to clean for health, not just for appearance or smell. That was a long time ago. It's now clean for health. You use best industry practices, science and evidence that comes through training and education. But more importantly, Jeff, it's recognition. So the ISSA Cleaning for Health curriculum, the courses, has been reviewed and approved by the US Department of Labor. What in our alliance, again, ISSA has an alliance partnership with NORMI. What Doug has done down here is worked with the state government. The Florida state government has now received both our workshop, our face-to-face workshop, as well as our online material, and they've peer reviewed it, and they've now said we now approve the Cleaning for Health workshop curriculum for both face-to-face and online for workforce development in the state of Florida. Every state in the country has workforce development programs, but more importantly, they don't do it for the cleaning industry. And as we found this morning, everyone that attended the course today haven't had any training in the last 5 years. They would love to get training, but it's not here how to use a piece of microfiber or how to use a mop or how to use a vacuum cleaner. They want to know the why. Why is it so important to create indoor spaces, safe and healthy? Because you and I know, Jeff, everyone spends about 90% of their life in an indoor space. And if you live to the age of 80, Jeff, that's 72 years indoors. Wouldn't you like that to be health and safe?
I think so. I would agree with that. So Gavin, what's next on your agenda for more training centers? If someone says, hey, I've got a good classroom, I'd like to be part of this, what should they do?
Well, within the GVAC Staff Facility Accreditation Program, it's a continuous improvement program, Jeff. It's no pass or fail. First of all, you've got to tell us how you clean. Your cleaning story. What tools, what equipment, what products, with what chemistry do you use on different surfaces in different areas? How do you measure that? How do you implement that? How do you do that in a way that creates a safe indoor space? We start that as the baseline, and then we put them on a continuous improvement program. And so what we did with Normie, and I said, Doug, you bring in all these people into the Normie Pro Academy, they leave. We do it. We measured it, it works. We used our ATP meters, we used our UV black lights, we used our indoor air quality monitors to monitor the cleaning process, and we created a healthy indoor space for the next class. And it's a simple process. People know how to do it, they just don't know how to tell the story, Jeff. And the GVAC Star accreditation process is about telling the story, science, evidence-based. You get the accreditation, and then you keep improving. And so it's so important. We want to see a network of training centers in the US, around the world, that teach standardized, approved curriculum. And now we've got our Cleaning for Health workshop approved by federal government as well as now a state government.
So one of the things that I found, if I could say this, Jeff, one of the things that I found that's so neat about this accreditation is that you can know what to do, but you can't teach what to do unless you do it. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to say, look, you come to our facility, we know how to clean, so we can intelligently talk to you about how to do it in your environment. And it just makes sense.
All right, you both can chime in on this question. What's coming up in the future, in the short term and the long term?
Well, I'll just tell you that we have big plans. Normie has big plans this next year in 2024 to expand out to the West Coast. We've already talked with some folks and trained some folks in the UK. Interesting thing is we find out that the only people who need solutions are people who breathe. So we're really excited about being able to do our training out across the country and to expand that way. Part of that's going to be our effort at the ISSA conference to have a booth there and start talking to folks in other parts of the country.
Yeah, so Jeff, at the ISSA show in Las Vegas, November 14th, Tuesday, we have a free 3-hour Cleaning for Health workshop in English and also a free 3-hour Cleaning for Health workshop in Spanish. And Normie's providing the instructors for the Spanish course. And it's so important. We've had the Cleaning for Health workshops now translated into 8 languages. As Doug said, we're looking for Haitian Creole instructors. Are we going to find them? You bet you we are. We just got to look hard, but we're going to find them. So what we're going to ensure that the training material that ISSA has, Normie has, is available for every essential cleaning professional. This is probably over 6 million people in the US alone. And then we put them on a pathway of continuing education, workforce development. But more importantly, we make them feel that they are essential. We make sure the government realizes they're essential. That's the next step. So 2024, Doug and I and many of the other people that we work with, there's about 20 of us in the team, have come up with curriculum, dates, times for workshops. We're going to publish that soon. But we're so rich in training material, we're just going to put it into a program that helps people.
There's one thing I know for sure from this conversation. There's no vacation for either one of you for a long time. So get back to work, and thank you for this today.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
We're going to get started here with Skip. And Skip, I want to welcome you. And for the people that don't know you, you've taken quite a few of our courses. We've actually met down in Mexico. You joined us down there for some training. That was an interesting boat ride we had too. It was a really good time. And I'm glad that you're here with us tonight. And I'm really glad that you followed through with becoming a Normie Pro like you said you were going to. So if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and what your interest was in at least starting the process of becoming a Normie Pro.
Yeah, thanks, Lance. That was a fantastic educational forum in Mexico. And yes, we did have a lot of fun on the boat.
Yes.
I guess from more of an overview, many years ago, I talked to my wife and I said, we really need to get into the mold industry. And it was like, why? I said, because it's not comprehensive. They're missing key points. The reason I brought that up was because I have over 2 decades of experience in healthcare, medical diagnostics, and I have a kind of unique perspective. At least I thought I did until I met more Normie members on the microbial landscape, and had too much crossing paths with people who had traditional remediation and they were either sick or not and so on. It just spurred my interest on that. And then that it was put on the back burner. I'm going back 10 years. Then COVID hits in 2019, I think it was. And I was driving on the 101, we're located out here in Santa Barbara. And I saw a plumbing truck go by, and they had a banner on there that they obviously had made up very quickly. It said, "We kill COVID." Okay, that's it. So I'm taking a very different approach to this from infectious disease in that implantable and or sterilization and maximally reduce things that can make you sick, right? Heart valves, you have to be sterilized. They can't create health problems. They're supposed to solve them. And so I started looking and was certified by a different entity as a remediator and assessor, and got my feet wet and started learning and got into a little bit of IICRC training. And then through my company affiliation was introduced to Normie. And this is going back now, 2 years anyway, 2 to 3 years, I believe. And I was fascinated by the breadth and depth of knowledge on this very thing that I was seeking. And I just couldn't get enough. I just could not get enough. And of course, I went down the CMA, CMR, and it was the most comprehensive class with the instructors were consummate professionals, and the type of information and the way it was laid out, I was just soaking it up. And then as I learned more about Normie itself, its history, recently, right, this July was 20 years anniversary, and I started to look at the breadth and depth of other types of programs. That led me to going to the conference in Mexico. And then shortly thereafter, I went to Florida for the NCRSI, NCMP.
Hey,
And
Skip, let me stop you for 1 second because we're throwing a lot of initials out there and there's people watching that may not know what you're talking about, like the NCRSI, it's the Normie certification for sensitized individuals, actually for remediators for sensitized individuals, or the NCMP, certified mold professional or microbial professional. And it's a different look, like you said, at the industry, and I'm glad that you had brought that up. And because of your background from the medical side, you see the value in not just giving patients, here's your medicine, go back to your contaminated environment. And obviously we can't fix people, we fix houses, and that's what the medical side is missing. So I just wanted to bring that back to, I think it's such an important point, and you picked on that, and that was really something that everybody really needs to consider if they're doing this business.
Yeah, no, thank you for setting me straight on that. My apologies to the audience. These acronyms were difficult enough for me to remember, and now I tend to cite them rather than their full trade name, right? But here's the difference. I was fortunate enough to we've been hiring some additional technicians, and they're getting their CMA CMR through Normie, and then we'll be taking additional classes. One of which has 16 years experience in the industry, more so on the water damage abatement side, but with two different companies in various parts of the state of California. And as we started talking about the things that Normie talks about, I would ask, have you ever had these discussions before? Were these any of these topics, things that you would be talking about on a daily basis, either internally with the businesses that you were representing or with your respective clients? And the answer was no. Nobody wants to talk about this stuff. This is about water. It's about drying it out. It's about demolition, and it's about reconstructing and getting a PRV that passes. And so I know that I'm on the right path. I know we were on the right path, and I know I am absolutely aligned with an organization that is at the forefront of this. And through our conversations, since I've got to know you, and certainly with Doug and others at Normie, this whole IAQ, which is what this is, right? This is an indoor air quality, because invariably, no matter what the water intrusion event, whether it's the catastrophic occurrences in Florida, most recently with the 2 hurricanes and tornadoes, or a water heater leak, it doesn't matter what it is, a water damaged building invariably, rather quickly, becomes a toxic environment from the quality of the air that occupant is breathing. And a preponderance of the industry that I know of, not everyone, does not recognize that. And the indoor air quality aspect within this very large industry, I think, is going to grow in leaps and bounds with its awareness. It's not just what's wet on a wall, it's what are you breathing as a result of that getting wet. And that's critical.
Well, one of the things that, you and I have talked about is, you mentioned this is all IAQ, indoor air quality. Well, a lot of the companies that are out there, or most of them doing all this type of work, forget that they're under the umbrella of indoor air quality. Whether they're plumbers, carpenters, electricians, whatever they're doing has some kind of effect on the indoor air quality, but they don't go to that next level. And that's what you've recognized, and that's what we talk about.
Yeah, when I meet with a client, any of my technicians meet with someone, or even if it's a phone call, I have a mold problem. I said, well, what about specifically? And then we start talking. We have a line of questions, very simple, very, very, very fundamental. Why are you calling? How long have you lasted? And where's the water damage? Right. And so through our inspections and in our preliminary IAQ diagnostics, air testing, right, and I'm not going to go down that pathway right now. What we hear invariably, and this is fundamental, I think, not because of my background, but the Normie trained professional is sharing this information, is sharing their knowledge, knows the type of questions to ask. And invariably, we get 100% of the time. I have spoken to 2 or 3 other companies. They have no clue what I'm talking about. That's even a larger issue, not to jump from this subject, when we talk about someone who's confirmed as a SEERS diagnostics, or diagnosed with SEERS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. But just the general basis, the general public is doing their due diligence before they call us when they have a problem. They know it's an indoor air quality problem. They know it's a moisture problem, but it all comes back down to building science and then building performance enhancements. So as a Normie professional and now having this Normie Pro designation, I've said it all the time. I tell my technicians, the responsibility falls on you and you alone to be as good or consummate subject matter expert as you possibly can, because somebody is asking for information and we need to give them the correct information, and then the fact that we can solve the problem comprehensively. And Normie's the only one who talks about it. It's the pole position, and I've said this for 2 years. I think Normie should own that pulpit as the indoor air quality authority within this industry.
Well, you just went through the process of becoming a Normie Pro. And I think you had to take a step back and think about all the things that we required. And did that surprise you at all, what we were looking for?
No, not at all. Not since I met you and learned how you operate, and certainly in meeting Doug and Tim and others that were at the conference. You know, I would consider industry colleagues. The breadth and depth of knowledge, absolutely not. The Normie track is, and now let me just say this, right? Because I do believe that this is relevant for the audience. I'm operating in California. California does not have any laws associated with mold assessing or mold remediation. There are companies out here that environmental testing companies that are providing, air spore trap, culturable, VOC testing, et cetera, but they're also writing, they're authoring mold assessment reports and dictating what the remediation should be, and they have no certifications, none whatsoever. There are other, and I can cite two right in the within 10 miles of my office, and so when you see that happening, the analogy I come up with, and I talk to people who share those reports. I need feedback. I want a second opinion. And you look at it and it's not complete, not comprehensive, not this, not that, devoid of know this, know that. Source identification wasn't existing, and yet they're telling somebody they've got to spend thousands of dollars. There's a problem there. And so part of this is, and I'm not trying to be degrading of anybody trying to earn a good living and trying to help our fellow human beings. But you'd like, with something that's so important, that the person coming in working on your home in this environment, to at least had some type of certifications. Like, you go to the doctor, my knee hurts. Well, would you like your orthopedic surgeon to at least gone to med school, right, to know these things? And that's where I'm going to build that bridge. We're not talking about rudimentary type information that Normie is training people with. It is the latest science. And I've said this recently: if the general public knew what Normie is sharing through their training program, if this decades of tens of thousands of peer-reviewed published scientific literature, if it were published in Sports Illustrated, right, People Magazine, Better Homes and Garden, every one of our phones would be ringing off the wall, because it is an absolute epidemic in and of itself.
Let me ask you something on a more positive note.
I'm not trying to be a downer here.
Oh, no, and I appreciate what you're saying, but I really want to focus a little bit more on you. All right. I'm going to have Doug come in here in a few minutes too, and I'm sure he's got a bunch of questions and things he wants to talk about. But I think, oh, you just derailed me with that last statement. It's all about you doing the Normie Pro path. And what is that going to do for your business, in your mind, in your planning going forward, if it already hasn't started doing something? That's what I'd like to hear going forward.
Okay, well, there's no I in team guy here, right? So I am one of the Normie professionals that has an oar to pull, and that's how I look at it. But to answer your question specifically, the legitimacy, right, of what I say is now backed by a national, highly regarded and respected entity, period. And I use that, right? And I've actually got some areas on my webpage where I'm promoting who is Normie and why is it important. we tell people here that you can go to the California Department of Health in their question and answer page. Again, no laws, but if you need help assessing or remediating, who do you call? And the first one mentioned is Normie. So it gives credibility, and it's the accuracy and volume of information. So when I tell people I'm Normie certified, they don't know what that means. I said, go, and I tell them, go look it up. I want you to look. You can't have this type of a business relationship with someone you don't like, first of all, and secondly, you don't trust. You're entrusting me to solve a microscopic problem that is causing illness within your family. You need to understand that I am very uniquely qualified and capable. The deliverable differentials that we present is unlike any other company out here, and that's true. So it does allow me to go down that pathway and say, on the old school stuff, feature benefit. In dealing with us, you get this. In dealing with us, you get this. In dealing with us, you get this. And it does make a difference, and it does matter. The problem that I think we are all faced with, and I'm no different, is this is a educational program. It's creating awareness within the masses, and that's the challenge.
The term that we are constantly using, and this comes from Dr. Gavin McGregor Skinner, is follow the science.
Yeah.
And that's really what we are trying to do. And the Normie Pro level of training and certification or designation is people that we feel have reached the amount of training, expertise, knowledge, have the right disposition to work in this industry. And that's where you are. So congratulations on that. Doug,
Yeah.
I see you've come in the room.
Yes, I have. I just think one of the exciting things to me is to have people like Skip who are really committed to helping folks the right way. I think there are a lot of people out there in the marketplace that maybe think they know what they're doing, but really don't. I think it's wonderful for us. It's always been kind of a dream of mine since we started Normie to have an army of people out there doing what we're capable of doing, but our arms are not that long. We need a bunch of people out there that are telling the story. And we said from the very beginning that we're in the education business. It's not just about educating professionals, it's about educating professionals and teaching them how to educate their clients. And sometimes that means taking the time, spending the energy involved in being able to sit down with the client and tell them exactly what you're going to do. And I think that's one of the things that Skip has brought to the table. That's why I'm so proud to be able to have him as one of our Normie pros. He's going to be in the marketplace fixing what a lot of other people don't even know how to begin to fix. And so thank you, Skip, for your commitment, not just to us. I mean, that obviously is very flattering, but more importantly is your commitment to doing what's right. And I just really appreciate that.
Well, you're very welcome. I mean, it's a joy. I mean, this is a very humbling experience for me. It was a very robust experience that, at this point in time in my life, I didn't know that I had to turn my brain on and go study stuff. But it needs to be, it has to be. Not foolishly ridiculous, like trying to get an insurance license where they make it so confusing that they don't want so many people to have an insurance license. This is about relevant, very critical information, and it has to be stout and it has to be robust. But back to the science that you bring. Well, Doug, you've sat through one of my educational presentations. It's very heavily laden with some of this decades-long scientific peer-reviewed published articles. And you just let people know that this is what happens. This is what happens in an environment. And this is what we've known, not since 2017. We've known it since 1990. 1995, and yet the industry does not pay the type of attention that it should. We know this, right? And so, and those of us who are knowledgeable about this, we can tell by looking at an air sample result. I know you do it, and I know Lance would do it, and Tim can do it, and there's many people on here that can do it, but how nice would it be? Well, how would that change your business if you could look at an air sport trap result and be able to tell somebody you had a major water event here, most likely recently. And I do that, and they go, how did you know that? Right? And because to properly diagnose the building establishes the framework for creating the sequences of either remediation, abatement, and or sanitization, and reversing the microbial contamination. Therefore, that environment now supports wellness as opposed to being a most likely contributing source to human illness. And it's really cool to be able to do that.
Yeah. So Skip, we have a lot of people in the room tonight that obviously, but I think we have a bigger audience that are going to watch this on our TV channel. And I'm curious as to how you feel, or how would we go about letting our normie members understand the power of what's in this higher level education, this advanced education, which leads to the Normie Pro designation. And the reason I'm asking that is, you're right, we're celebrating our 20th year. We have some folks, I got to tell you, we have some folks that came in 18, 19, 20 years ago and never taken another course.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, you know, that's going to be the case. What do they say? 20% of the people do 80% of the work. And there's always going to be a small percentage of people who really feel the same tug that you feel and that I feel and that Lance feels about being able to help the clients in a different sort of way, and confident enough to know that they're willing to pay for it. I don't have to, you know, compete with people who are giving stuff away. So I'm just curious, you know, here's a platform for you. How would you tell these Normie members that have maybe been around 2 years, 6 years, 10 years, that this is really a step they need to seriously consider?
Yeah, I would lead with the following, which is the basis of our business out here in Santa Barbara, California. Since we started, I would say that 30 to 40% of our population, of people who call us and we ultimately end up doing work for, are being treated by a doctor, are confirmed to be mold sensitized, and or some of them are very, very sick and are subsequently diagnosed with SEERS. That's how this business has taken off, and people are beginning to realize that. I mean, we've got county employees now that are telling other county buildings that this is the company you need. This is the company you need. So I look at this, and here's the bridge that I'm building, right? If you look at the sensitized individual, the percent of the population that has a susceptibility to mold, it's tens of thousands of people within this audience and the normie family or normie membership who will watch this at another time. In any given part of the country, tens of thousands of people need you to be the subject matter authority. They have an environment that's contaminated, whether that's a hotel, their home or apartment, or their school, or their office. EPA, 50% of the buildings are contaminated, right? What gets you the ticket to the dance? I happen to think it's the Normie certification, right? Because we know what we're talking about. It's becoming that subject matter expert. And then 30% of the population, my goodness, 30% of the population out here in Santa Barbara, as an example, I may be a little bit lofty, but if I include the 20% that has a genetic predisposition, right? And then we look at the SEERS, or what we know to be vis-a-vis, somewhere around 30% of the population. That's 60 years of work for us. Right. With a subset of the population that is, in many cases, at their wits' end. The amount of depression and so on and so forth is just almost incomprehensible. So, you know, in business, I've been in business a long time. You've been in business a long time. Lance has been in business a long time. So what's the low-hanging fruit? It just so happens it's the most challenging because nobody wants to deal with it. and nobody has the capacity and capability to deal with it. So therefore, Normie gets you this spotlight put on you. This is somebody who really knows what they're talking about. They can help. That's devoid in this industry out here. It's devoid.
Hey, Skip, there's a separation in the industry that's happening, and it's starting to gain momentum. People in this industry have always been cleaning for appearance.
Right.
You know, now it's starting to come across that people understand cleaning for health is different than cleaning for appearance.
Right.
Again, Dr. Gavin talks about this a lot, and I'm using his words here, but he talks about if you look at an airliner, the 150, 200 seats on there, Doug, what was it? They give them 9 minutes to clean the plane.
Yeah.
The best you can do is fold the safety belts.
Yeah.
That's cleaning for appearance. It's not cleaning for health. And that's what the whole Normie Pro concept is. It's doing it the right way for the right reasons.
Yeah, somebody who is pretty smart and wise typically will say, you know, if you do the right thing, people notice. So that's you up there in the top left-hand corner of the screen. And that's what Normie is to me. I could not be, there is no other certifying entity that is talking about this, that wants to do it right, who has the breadth of knowledge, who trains people to do it right. And look, we're overlooking many aspects of this, right? We're many aspects, but you have to understand the microbial landscape and the interaction, you know, in that indoor environment. And yeah, every time we fly on a plane, it's like the seat is in a biosafety cabinet with an infectious disease sitting over there in the corner of the cabinet. I mean, it's really crazy. And it is a building science issue. It's all of those things, and water is the thing that turns everything on.
So I have another question for you, Skip, and this is maybe a little bit off the subject, but I'm curious to hear your comments about this. And I know a good lawyer should never ask a question that they don't know the answer to, but frankly, I don't know the answer to this question, so I'm going to ask you. We have a lot of our members, especially the new guys that come in, who think that their business should be built around insurance and insurance companies and insurance payouts. And I'm just curious if you would share with us what percentage of your business is actually paid for by insurance companies?
Less than 1%.
Yeah, so I've been preaching that for a really long time, and thank you for answering that question. And I couldn't have written it better. But I've been preaching that for a really long time, that we sometimes, unfortunately, in the restoration and remediation, even in the assessment business, we tend to feel like we've got to be working with insurance companies, and we just don't. People, I've said it for years, and I think you'll agree to this, people buy what they want. And so if they feel like there's something that's going to improve their health or going to improve their family's health, that's what they want because of their love for their kids, because of their love for their wife or their husband. That's what they want. They're going to figure out a way to pay for it, and they're not going to wait around for Allstate or Farmers or somebody else to write them a check.
Couldn't agree with you more. And here's what Normie does for that person. We are uniquely showing them the microbial profile within their environment. We've identified their moisture content. We have the presence of beta-glucans. We have the presence of actinobacteria. We have marker molds. We have total particulate in the indoor environment. And then we've explained to them in a very simple, easy to digest, that everything that's going on there is in their lungs and then in their bloodstream. We are the solution at that point in time. Because when they talk to other people, they're not getting that. In fact, they can't even go to a healthcare practitioner half the time that understands what's going on for them within their body. Now, we don't talk about that, the health part. We make recommendations, but we talk about cause effect. right? And this is environmental, and it's air. And I'll say it again. It's why I'm so closely aligned to you guys, to this fascinatingly capable organization. Because if it's on the surface, it gets in the air, it goes back on the surface, it gets back in the air, and it always ends up in your lung. Period, end of story. And that's what causes the problem. And that's up to the doctors to dot that I and cross that T. But we bring them to that point where they deduce that on their own, and they have no other option to have that problem solved.
Well, and as you suggested, I think the whole concept that we've really tried to push hard, especially probably in the last 6 or 7 years, this idea of the microbial load. You think in terms of endotoxins, actinos, and what kind of testing you're going to do, mycotoxin testing, HERTS-me, what is an ERMI test? What does it mean? What does it do? What does it not do? Those kinds of questions at that higher level, I think, unfortunately, a lot of our members don't realize the value of that. But, there's a lot of people that are suffering out there with symptoms that look like mold that's not mold. And one of the things that I think that we've been really excited about the last few years as we've taught this in our NCRSI class for sensitized individuals is putting together a team, including their doctor, to be able to identify what things they're actually looking for. And it may not even be mold. I think I've told the story before when I was asked to go out they thought they had a mold problem. They didn't have a mold problem. They had a MRSA problem. Well, how did I find that? Because when we do an assessment, we don't just do mold, we do bacteria, we do VOCs. And the point is that, as you've said, and I think correctly so, when you have that broader view, there's a lot more people you can help. And it's not just a matter of saying, well, it's not mold, see ya. It's having the ability to be able to go deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we're going to see here is more of a SWOT approach, right? That there's going to be within that dynamic. And of course, the norming certification class for the sensitized individual, we're already looking at a very, very massive amount of integers affecting that family. I'm dealing with one in Los Angeles now. 10 years ago, they spent $200,000. They ripped everything out of their house. They couldn't live there. They moved to an apartment at this gentleman's estate, lived on his balcony for 5 years until they found a home before they moved into a house. They spent another $200,000 ripping everything down to and he started getting sick again, right? And it's not just mold. So you have the healthcare practitioner who's dealing with the patient. You have us that's dealing with our patient, the building. Then you have separate sets of expertise. The lungs of the building is the HVAC system, if they have one. Then you need somebody who's very competent and knowledgeable and patient enough to deal with detoxification. Sometimes that's not the same doctor. Then you have a nutritionalist who specialize in mold detoxification and nutrition. So it's going to take that team approach, and it's a collaboration. And I tell people up front, this is going to be a collaboration. I need to work with your doctor. I need to work with your detoxification expert if they have one or don't. And we are going to work on this together, much like when you go into an operating room to have a knee replacement, you have an anesthesiologist, you have someone who's assisting the doctor, you have the surgeon, you have this, but long before that, you had the team that came in and sanitized and decontaminated. And after the procedure, you've got the intensive care unit for recovery. That's what this takes, because it's that involved. These are very, very microbially toxic environments.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you just gave me a good transition. One of the things that we started doing last month, and a lot of people don't even know this, we got some advertising out on it, but not a lot. We took all of our building science courses and bundled them into a really great price where you can take these building science courses and understand insulation and air movement and HVAC. And anybody that's listening, if they're interested, they can call, and we'd be glad to give them that number, that coupon code for that particular class. But that's, again, taking a broader view, as you said, a broader view of that environment rather than just going in and taking a couple of swabs. I was telling somebody just yesterday, I had a conversation with someone just yesterday about this, and they were concerned about, am I going to have to spend $20,000 on testing? And I said, well, do you remember, I'm old enough to remember when you took your car in, the first thing they did was change the points and plugs.
Yeah.
If that didn't work, then you took the next step. If that didn't take you took the next step. Now, of course, they plug in a computer and they figure out what the problem is right away. But my point is that really is the way we approach it, almost incrementally, is that what we're doing is eliminating possible problems.
Yes.
And so sometimes that is a step-by-step process. It's not necessarily going in and taking all the tests you could possibly take, in 2 days and then dumping all of that on the client. So again, that's part of that is from the training process, understanding how it is that you can approach this, where a customer can actually afford it, but you can get the information you need to help them and their doctor figure out what's going on in their environment.
Yeah, it's very sequential. I'm glad you brought that up. There's a reason why you are who you are. We look at this very methodically, and we line a bunch of dominoes up. And this is another part of the conversation I talk to with our clientele. Look, the dominoes are all aligned or in position to be lined up. What we need to do is identify rationale for doing anything first and foremost. And once we get a keen understanding of what's going on, then we've positioned those and we just go tick, right? Because understanding what caused the problem, having perfect clarity on what the problem is, dictates the sequences necessary to abate the problem and create an environment that no longer is going to be toxic. And then it becomes a maintenance game. It's no different than, again, this is, look, I could talk about this for days and I'm so passionate about it. It's the working with you all and everybody out there who I can't see right now is the closest thing to when I was working in the healthcare field. Because we all know this, that it's about testing, it's about process, it's about procedure, it's about continuity and consistency, it's about never thinking you've got all the answers, that you have to go into every environment with an open mind, because what you think could have been the problem isn't. It may have been a contributory factor, but it wasn't necessarily primary. It's no different than trying to understand why somebody doesn't feel well, right? And the first thing is the blood pressure cuff, then it's the stethoscope, and then it's, well, you still, okay, maybe we need an x-ray. And at what point in time do you order a Chem 20? When you need to order the Chem 20 based upon what the information is telling you need to do. But it's all data driven, right? It's all data driven. And that's another thing that Normie does. It's data driven. Now, yeah, there's an expense to it and we want to minimize that. And I tell people all the time, my job is to solve this problem without you having to pull any more funds out of your bank account than necessary. And I promise that that will occur. And if I tell you you need to make a withdrawal, there's a good reason for it and you'll know why. If I tell you you don't need to, there's a reason why, and you'll have the data that suggests that you don't need to make that withdrawal, because this is about doing the right thing, right? And so it just makes it so. It's so unique. It's, again, Normie is the PhD. Normie Pro is a PhD, and I have a lot to learn, and I am so very glad that I did take that building science class when it was bundled, because I thought I knew some stuff. And I was able to use many aspects of each of those classes, most recently at a resort in our general vicinity, and told them that they have a building problem. Structurally, it was built in 1908. And this is why you're having these problems. And I was able to educate them and say, let's take a look at how the building was built. What are the problems? This is why you're having these problems. And so you start doing investigating, and all of a sudden you've got credibility, you've got data. Here it is. What do you need to know? And nobody else does this. No other company does it. Everybody is not questioning hearts, not questioning business ethics. But this, we now know, science has showed this, the peer-reviewed studies for decades. This is a major problem. And most of the mediators, most of the people that are in this business are only scratching the surface. That's why, for example, again, not being disrespectful, but most of the time, most companies fail a PRV 60, 70% of the time in the first shot. Most of the mold goes back because you didn't properly identify all areas of the building that had a water problem. And so you've got this knock against, those of us in this industry. I spent $200,000, mold came back, and I just hired some other company, and I hired some other company, and we're still sick. Well, that goes away with a normie, trained and professional, competent, caring human being.
Well, and I think that's the beautiful thing about what we do when we do it right. You don't want to hear back from the customer that the problem's back. And when you take this holistic approach, I think that's really the answer. Of course, that's why we always call this a solution-based assessment, which is really looking at the end goal. The end goal is we're going to create a cleaner, safer, healthier environment. We're going to do the best we can with your building. That may not be the reason why you're having the issues, but at least we can say that the building is as clean as we can get it. And I know you've done some phenomenal jobs. That's why, again, I'm really very proud to have you as a Normie Pro. I understand you get zeros every now and then on terms of any kind of growth at all when you're through with a project. And I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I wanted to learn, I think I've used this analogy. You go to the dermatologist, you got something on your cheek, they take it out, right? Well, the pathology report, which is what our PRV is the pathology report. There's nothing in there. We got it all. And so it's a change. You know that. We've been talking about how do we interject a different standard of care as an end result. But that's what we do. And it's reassuring, it's reproducible, and it should be certainly for the sensitized individual, the new standard of care.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Lance. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here, Skip. I know we're winding down, but you know how much I appreciate you and the work that you're doing and the relationship that we have. It's great. Thank you so much for being so committed to what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I just want to figure out what the secret handshake is now.
No.
I don't know what that is.
No, you got to be part of the environmental task force for that. We've talked about that, and we're going to get you involved.
All right.
All right. Well, no, Skip, I want to echo Doug's comments and thank you for, being part of this. We think you're a big asset as a Normie Pro to this industry and to us. We appreciate that. So
Yeah,
if you can hear.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Proud to be here. Proud to drive, be part of this boat. I'm pulling on my end of the oar. I'm talking about Normie as often as I can. It makes a big difference. You gotta have people who know what they're talking about. See, simple. That's the simple part of it.
Well, we appreciate you spending the time here with us. We know you're 3 hours behind me here on the East Coast, and it's the end of your work day, and I guess I'm a little bit early for my next work day, but here we are. So I appreciate that. I'm just looking to see if there's any other comments that may have popped in the room here.
Yep.
Just some thank you, things like that are coming through for you now. So absolutely, we appreciate it, and it appears that the people listening did also. But thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. My pleasure.
For the rest of you out there, if you are interested in becoming a Normie Pro, I'm going to bring up a screen real quick just to give you an idea of what you need to look for and how you get there to get the process started. Give me 1 second. Hopefully you can all see my screen. This is normie.org. And when you come to the main page at normie.org, you're going to see a blue tab over here on the left. You click on that, it's going to take you to a page that's going to show you different tracks that you're able to go down for training and advancing your career in this industry. The one that you want to look at is Normie Pro, and it's a drop down. There's a few things that you need to look at. Obviously, all the information's here, things that are required and point values and how you get to the Normie Pro level. But the first thing to do is step one. This is request the Normie Pro status. Once you do that, it's like 2 or 3 questions. It puts you into the system. We're able to work with you and help you through the process, let you know what you need, what you don't need, and it goes from there. And at that point, there's other things you can look at here. You're more than welcome to click through this and see all the different groups of information that are out there. But this is where you start. Request Normie Pro status, click here. Takes you to a very simple page. A little bit of information gets filled out, and that gets the process started. So I would encourage you, if you have an interest in becoming a Normie Pro, that's where you go. Yes, Doug. Looks like your hand was raised. Maybe not.
I think that was unintentional. Sorry.
Okay.
Pushed the wrong button.
Telling me to be quiet. Okay, I got it. So, all right. Does anybody have any questions in the room? Anything you would want to ask Skip? Or any of us? Anything about the Normie Pro process or designation? Vincent, I'm interested in becoming a Normie Pro as well as service expert. Absolutely. I showed you where you go to start the process. That gets you into our system, and we will be in touch and help you through the process from there. All right. I do want to remind everybody that's in the room to please register your CEUs. We're on the new cycle now, so when this is over, you can go into normie.org if it hasn't popped up behind the screen, which it's supposed to, and just register your CEU for tonight. And that's something that you won't have to worry about later in the year, trying to remember when you attended training. That's all I got. Tim, Doug, anything else you want to bring up or mention? No?
Good.
All right. Well, again, thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. If you have any questions that you think of after we're done here, just go to support@normie.org or send an email to support@normie.org and we will get back to you, or give us a call during the day. And you may hear some new voices and names when you call in. We have some newer people working with us now, so reach out and say hello. Thank you all. Give me one moment. I want to shut down the recording here, and we'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome to our program Dr. Gavin McGregor Skinner, Senior Director at ISSA.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you today?
Doing good. How about you?
Oh, doing great. Survived the snow this week.
Snow? Let's not even talk about the snow. We've got it here too. But we're here today to talk about how the news is out. You know, the ISSA and EPA collaboration has created a buzz in the industry. We have the news online. We have an episode of Straight Talk that discusses this. Gavin's on that. And we have an article coming out in ISSA Today magazine. Sneak peek. There it is. Can't read it yet, though. But Gavin, we really got started with the video project that got the attention of the industry. Can you tell us about this, and are you surprised by the reception that you're hearing about right now?
Yeah, really important, Jeff. Very, very surprised at the reception from across the whole value chain of the clean industry. I want to emphasize, Jeff, there's a common goal. The common goal is to increase knowledge, demand, that's procurement, and use of cleaning products with safer ingredients like the Safer Choice labeled products. And yes, we started this by listening to 30 industry experts at the ISSA show. And what I've had recently is so many ISSA member organizations contact me or contact other ISSA staff saying, this aligns really well with our company values. How do we get involved?
Those that are asking the question you just mentioned, ISSA members, companies that should become members of ISSA, what is their role in this? Can you talk about that? Because that's the question they have. What can they do?
Yeah, so the first thing to do, Jeff, as we heard from our industry experts, 30 of them back at the ISSA show, Everyone deserves protection from harmful effects of chemicals, cleaning products. That includes the workers who use the cleaning products, the employees in those buildings, and anyone who visits those buildings daily. So what I really wanted to emphasize for people to get involved, Jeff, right now, making safer choices is about collaboration. It's about strengthening new and existing partnerships. And we're creating a community through ISSA members. So to do that, we're asking organizations to sign a memorandum of understanding. And that memorandum of understanding is a formal, but it's a non-binding agreement between two parties, ISSA, the trade association, and our ISSA member organization. And then that memorandum of understanding, it will outline the roles and responsibilities and intentions for the collaboration. So again, I want to emphasize the MOU is not legally enforceable like a contract, but it helps us, ISSA and our ISA members, understand each other's perspectives and how we work together for this common goal in 2025. And you can send me information. You can send an email to makingsaferchoices@issa.com if your company, your organization would like to sign a memorandum of understanding. And then what we then emphasize, Jeff, is that there are probably 4 key activities in 2025 that any ISSA member company can participate, can be part of, can collaborate with us after they sign that memorandum of understanding.
I like a plan, and that's a great start to this, Gavin. That's something that those watching should do right now. Send that email, get that document, get that signed. Talk about this, Gavin. How will this help the cleaning industry be data-driven and create healthier built environments? The big picture.
Yeah, okay, Jeff, this is good because the 4 activities that we're going to do that I want to outline in 2025 through our collaborative partnerships are going to create new information, new data. It's going to be that we're about to launch a survey of 1,000 facilities in Pennsylvania, New York, to ask the question, how do people make decisions on the procurement and use of cleaning products? In 2025, we're going to convene stakeholders and conduct focus group discussions and listen to their narratives of how they clean. That's our baseline. And we're going to learn about current knowledge, attitudes, and barriers to purchasing and using cleaning products. In 2025, we're also, Jeff, going to develop a playbook for the procurement and use of safer choice label products. So we know that many of our ISA members have resources for education and training. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We're providing access to a much larger audience. This is going to include, Jeff, also on-site product demonstrations. And then the 4th big activity we're going to do in 2025 is storytelling. Storytelling that involves persuasive narratives that show how people clean with cleaning products with safer ingredients and how to measure performance and how we've led to the increased demand, knowledge, use, procurement of EPA safer choice label products and other eco-label products. All that's going to create new data. It's going to ensure that the data that we collect, Jeff, is going to show that we can prove that we're creating healthier built environments.
I like it. Gavin, this program or this project right now, ISSA Making Safer Choices project, is about Pennsylvania and New York, correct?
Yes, it is, Jeff. Currently, we have funding from the federal government through the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, for $1.2 million for activities in Pennsylvania and New York. But we're also working with ISSA members, partners, stakeholders, again, the whole value chain on how we can take this project to other states here in the US.
Let's talk about that. What does that look like to you? Let's say a manufacturer's in Iowa and they want to be involved. Well, they're not in Pennsylvania, they're not in New York. What do you see happening with this eventually?
What I see